Hey everybody, my name is Calvin, and today I'll be teaching you a very simple formula that you can use to learn and master recursion. Recursion might seem a bit confusing at first for a beginner, but there's a very simple three-step formula that makes it much more approachable. As an example, say we want to define a recursive function that returns the factorial of n. Remember that the factorial of a non-negative integer n is defined as start with n, then multiply it by each whole number 1 less than it, all the way until you reach 1. So n factorial is equal to n times n minus 1 times n minus 2, and so on. So some examples are 1 factorial is equal to 1, 2 factorial is equal to 2 times 1, which is equal to 2, 3 factorial is equal to 3 times 2 times 1, which is equal to 6, and so on. We'll use these as our test cases later. The first step in our formula is to find the base case. The base case is the smallest and most basic version of your function in the context of the problem. So some questions we want to ask ourselves is, what is the base that we want to launch off of? How do we want to deal with this base case? In our problem, what would be the simplest case for factorial? I'll give you a second to pause and think. Trivially, the base case is simply 1 factorial. You cannot have a negative or 0 factorial. So that means if we receive input n is less than or equal to 1, then let's simply return 1. So how would we implement this? It's pretty simple. This is our implementation of the factorial base case. It's very simple. Now that we have found and implemented the base case, we move on to the second step, which is to find the recursive case. Now, generally, what are the other cases aside from the base case? Given that we already know what the base case is, how do we eventually reach it in the context of our problem? If we start with 2 factorial, how would we reduce it down to 1 factorial? And if we had 3 factorial, how do we reduce it down to 2 factorial and then from there to 1 factorial? What would be the recursive case for factorial? Think about it for a second. For any number greater than 1, the factorial can be defined in terms of the previous factorial. So that means if we receive input n is greater than 1, then we can return n times n minus 1 factorial, or n factorial n minus 1. So how can we implement this? Very simple. The third step in our 3-step formula for recursion is to combine. Once we have figured out the base and recursive cases, it's as simple as just combining the both of them. However, the base case must go first, and the recursive case follows. Let's implement the final function in the code block below. Now that we have our complete recursive function, let's test our function out with our examples from before. After testing, we see that we have implemented our recursive function correctly. While this may be a simple example, every recursive function follows the same three-step pattern, that being 1. Define the base case, 2. Define the recursive case, 3. And combine the results at the end. Some recursive functions may require multiple base cases, but mastering this framework will give you the foundation to understand and implement any recursive function you encounter in the future. Thank you all for watching, and if you guys have any suggestions for what to approach next, please leave it in the comments below, and please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content. Thank you all for watching, and if you guys have any suggestions for please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content.